A mountain man paid for a black woman to cook for him, but when the trembling girl stepped off the dusty stagecoach clutching a worn leather satchel, she carried secrets that would teach him grace. The townspeople whispered cruel dismissals about another desperate soul seeking scraps, assuming her fate sealed. Kitchen servitude until winter claimed her, or worse. Meanwhile, the bearded hermit believed he'd purchased simple domestic labor for his isolated cabin, nothing more than hot meals and clean quarters. Yet beneath their crude arrangement lurked a dangerous truth. The woman possessed knowledge that could save lives or condemn them both, while the mountain man's hardened heart held space for the very humanity he'd sworn to abandon. When sickness inevitably strikes their unforgiving frontier, will her hidden abilities destroy them or forge an impossible alliance? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The dawn light caught the smoke rising from the plantation house as Eudora clutched her worn medical journal against her chest. Her master lay dead inside, and his creditors would arrive by noon to auction everything of value, including her. She ran through the morning mist, her herb pouch bouncing against her hip with each desperate step. The journal contained 15 years of medical knowledge learned at the side of Dr. Marcus Whitfield, the plantation physician who had secretly taught her surgery, diagnostics, and advanced herbal treatments. Now that knowledge might be her only salvation. 3 days later, Eudora stood in the dusty main street of Cedar Ridge, Colorado territory. Her stomach cramped with hunger, her feet bled through worn shoes. Every door she approached had slammed shut when they saw her face. Mrs. Henderson at the boarding house had sneered through the window. The general store owner waved her away before she could speak. Even the saloon refused her offer to scrub floors. Sheriff Hargrove approached with heavy boots and heavier intentions. His badge caught the afternoon sun as he stopped inches from her face. "You best know your place here, girl. We got rules about your kind causing trouble." Eudora kept her eyes down. "Just seeking honest work, sir." "Honest work," he spat into the dirt. "Try the next town over. This one's got no use for wandering strays." At the medical clinic, Dr. Edmund Cray barely looked up from his ledger when she offered to help tend the sick. His laugh held no warmth. "Medicine requires education, not wishful thinking. Find work suited to your station." Eudora's fingers tightened around her hidden journal. She had assisted in more surgeries than this man had probably witnessed. She could identify illnesses he had never encountered, but her skin determined her worth in his eyes. By evening, she had walked every street twice. No one would hire her for cooking, cleaning, or any labor they deemed appropriate. The night grew cold, and she had nowhere to sleep. Outside the trading post, a crude, handwritten notice caught her attention. "Mountain man seeks woman for cooking. Colored preferred. Room and board. Small wage. Must be sturdy. Ask for directions to McAllister cabin." Eudora stared at the paper. The words stung, but they also offered survival. The next morning, she borrowed a mule from a sympathetic stable boy and followed the winding trail 20 miles into the mountains. Pine trees towered overhead. The air grew thin and sharp. Her medical training told her the elevation would affect breathing and healing, but she pushed forward. The cabin sat in a clearing surrounded by towering peaks. Smoke drifted from a stone chimney. Firewood lay stacked in precise rows. Everything spoke of a man who valued order and solitude. Gideon McAllister emerged from the doorway like a bear disturbed from hibernation. His beard reached his chest. His clothes showed months of wear. His eyes held the wariness of someone who had chosen isolation over society. He studied her for a long moment. She met his gaze without flinching. "You answered my notice?" "Yes, sir." "Can you cook?" "I can." "Clean?" "Yes, sir." He nodded toward her small bundle of possessions. "That all you got?" Eudora's hand instinctively moved to protect her hidden journal. "It's enough." "Work starts at dawn. Meals 3 times daily. Keep the cabin tidy. Stay out of my business, and I'll stay out of yours." The arrangement felt brittle as winter ice. Both understood the desperate mathematics that brought them together. He needed domestic labor. She needed shelter and wages. Neither expected more. Eudora's first week passed in careful routine. She prepared simple meals from his stores of dried meat, beans, and preserved vegetables. She swept floors and washed clothes in the creek. She observed his habits while revealing nothing of herself. But Gideon noticed things. She read his few books when she thought he wasn't looking. She asked too many questions about the plants growing near the cabin. When he cut his hand chopping wood, she had moved toward him with instinctive medical concern before catching herself. "You got schooling?" he asked one evening. "Some," she answered carefully. "More than some, I'd wager." Eudora continued stirring the stew. "Education doesn't change what people see when they look at me." Gideon studied her profile in the firelight. Something about her precision, her quiet intelligence, unsettled his assumptions. The news reached them on a Tuesday morning. A traveler stopped for water and carried gossip from town. Sickness had struck Cedar Ridge. People were dying. Dr. Cray worked without sleep, but the disease spread faster than his treatments could contain it. Eudora's hands stilled on the bread dough she was kneading. Her medical knowledge screamed at her to help, but her circumstances chained her to this mountain cabin. That night she lay on her to Gideon's steady breathing across the room. Her journal lay hidden beneath her pillow, filled with treatments that could save lives. The weight of unused knowledge pressed against her chest like a physical burden. Thunder rolled across the peaks, and lightning illuminated the cabin windows. The storm was coming, but Eudora sensed it would bring more than rain to their fragile arrangement. The axe blade whistled through mountain air as Gideon split another log. 3 weeks had passed since the news from Cedar Ridge, and he worked with unusual intensity. Each swing carried the weight of unspoken thoughts about the woman who moved through his cabin with mysterious precision. The massive pine groaned as it began to fall. Gideon stepped back, calculating its path, but the tree's trunk had rotted inside, and it twisted as gravity claimed it. The heavy limb caught his left leg with a sickening crack. Pain exploded through his body as he collapsed. Blood seeped through torn fabric, where jagged bark had ripped flesh to bone. The leg bent at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. His vision blurred as shock set in. Eudora heard his cry from inside the cabin. She dropped her mending and ran toward the sound. The scene before her triggered every instinct Dr. Whitfield had trained into her over 15 years of medical apprenticeship. Gideon lay pinned beneath the branch, his face gray with pain. The wound gaped open, revealing damaged muscle and splintered bone. Without immediate treatment, infection would claim his life within days. "Don't move," she commanded, her voice suddenly carrying an authority that surprised them both. Eudora assessed the injury with practiced eyes. Compound fracture of the tibia, severe laceration with debris contamination, possible arterial damage. In her mind, Dr. Whitfield's voice guided her through the necessary steps. She disappeared into the cabin and returned with supplies that made Gideon's eyes widen despite his pain. Her hidden herb pouch contained surgical tools wrapped in clean cloth. Bottles of tinctures lined its bottom. Most shocking of all, she produced the leather journal he had glimpsed her reading in secret. "Where did you get those?" Eudora ignored his question as she built a fire and set water to boil. Her movements held the confidence of someone who had performed similar procedures countless times. She consulted her journal, checking dosages and procedures with the methodical care of a trained physician. "This will hurt, but it's necessary." The cleaning solution stung like liquid fire, but Gideon barely felt it through his amazement. Eudora's hands moved with surgical precision, removing bark fragments and dirt from the wound. She identified each damaged structure and addressed it systematically. From her pouch came a curved needle and silk thread. Gideon watched in stunned silence as she sutured torn muscle with the skill of a practiced surgeon. Her stitches were small, even, and placed with anatomical knowledge that surpassed many trained doctors. "You're not a cook." Eudora paused in her work. The moment of revelation hung between them like smoke in still air. 15 years of hiding her abilities warred against the immediate need to save this man's life. I was apprenticed to Dr. Marcus Whitfield for 15 years. He taught me surgery, diagnostics, and advanced herbal medicine. I learned more in his clinic than most physicians acquire in formal schooling. Gideon's mind reeled. The woman he had hired for domestic labor possessed medical knowledge that could rival any doctor in the territory. Her careful questions about local plants now made perfect sense. She had been identifying medicinal specimens. "Why didn't you tell me?" Eudora applied a poultice of herbs that immediately began numbing his pain. "Because the world sees what it chooses to see. A woman like me claiming medical knowledge faces accusations of witchcraft at best. At worst, she faces violence from those who believe she's overstepping her place." She splinted his leg with wooden slats and strips of cloth, immobilizing the fracture with professional competence. Every action demonstrated years of training and experience. Her journal contained detailed drawings of anatomical structures and notes on treatments that surpassed contemporary medical understanding. Dr. Whitfield treated me as his true apprentice. He said knowledge belonged to those willing to learn, regardless of their circumstances. When he died and the plantation changed hands, I took his journal and fled. The new owners planned to sell me south, where my education would be seen as dangerous. Gideon studied her face as she worked. Intelligence radiated from her features, no longer hidden behind the mask of servitude. Her eyes held the steady confidence of someone accustomed to making life and death decisions. "You could have told me you were a healer when you arrived." Eudora mixed a tea of willow bark and other herbs to fight infection and reduce fever. "Would you have believed me? Or would you have assumed I was lying to avoid kitchen work?" The honesty of her question silenced him. His own prejudices had blinded him to her true capabilities. He had seen only what society taught him to expect. Over the following days, Eudora's medical expertise became undeniable. She monitored his temperature, changed his dressings with sterile technique, and adjusted his herbal treatments based on his body's responses. Her care surpassed anything he could have received from the overworked doctor in Cedar Ridge. The pain medications she prepared were more effective than laudanum. Her wound cleaning prevented the infection that killed most men with similar injuries. Most impressive of all, she explained each treatment, sharing knowledge that demonstrated the depth of her education. "You're wasted as a cook," Gideon said on the 5th day as she checked his healing progress. Eudora's smile held years of frustrated dreams. "Tell that to the world that refuses to see past my skin." But Gideon was beginning to see everything differently. The epidemic still raged in Cedar Ridge, and he now understood exactly what kind of healer fate had delivered to his mountain cabin. Gideon's leg had healed stronger than before, but the news from Cedar Ridge grew darker each day. Travelers brought reports of entire families struck down by fever. Children died, while Dr. Cray struggled alone against the spreading disease. The town's makeshift cemetery expanded daily. Eudora stood at the cabin window, watching storm clouds gather over the valley. Her medical journal lay open on the table, revealing treatments for epidemic diseases that could save lives. The weight of unused knowledge pressed against her conscience like a physical burden. "I have to go to town." Gideon looked up from cleaning his rifle. 3 weeks of recovery had shown him the true depth of her abilities. Her herbal treatments had healed his leg faster than conventional medicine ever could. Her diagnostic skills surpassed those of trained physicians. "They won't accept help from you. You know that." Eudora turned from the window. Her eyes held the determination of someone who had made an irreversible decision. "People are dying while I hide in these mountains. Dr. Whitfield taught me that knowledge unused in service of healing becomes a burden on the soul. The townspeople will see you as overstepping. Sheriff Hargrove will run you out before you can help anyone. Then I'll work through you." The plan formed between them with desperate efficiency. Gideon would present himself as a mountain healer, with Eudora as his assistant. Her treatments would appear to come from his knowledge, while she worked quietly in the background. It felt like another kind of hiding, but it offered a path to help the dying. They loaded supplies into Gideon's wagon the next morning. Eudora packed her most effective remedies alongside conventional medical supplies. Her journal went into a hidden compartment, its knowledge too valuable to risk losing, but too dangerous to display openly. The ride to Cedar Ridge took 4 hours through mountain trails. With each mile, Eudora's anticipation grew. She had spent months suppressing her medical instincts. Now she would finally use her training to save lives. Cedar Ridge looked like a town under siege. Windows were shuttered against the disease. Bodies wrapped in sheets waited outside the funeral home. The few people on the streets moved with the hollow-eyed exhaustion of a community watching itself die. Sheriff Hargrove intercepted them at the town's edge. His suspicion focused immediately on Eudora, though she sat quietly beside Gideon without speaking. "What brings you to town, McAllister, and why is she here?" "Heard about the sickness. Brought some mountain remedies that might help." Hargrove's eyes narrowed as he studied Eudora. Something about her composed demeanor unsettled him. She carried herself with quiet confidence, rather than the subservience he expected. "Your girl stays outside while you talk to Dr. Cray. We got enough trouble without adding more complications." Dr. Cray looked 20 years older than when Eudora had last seen him. His clothes were stained with the evidence of countless medical battles. Dark circles ringed his eyes from sleepless nights fighting a disease that killed faster than he could treat it. "Mountain remedies?" Cray's laugh held no humor. "I've tried everything in my medical books. This fever burns through conventional treatments like they're water." Gideon gestured toward the wagon where Eudora waited. "My assistant has prepared some herbal compounds that work different than regular medicine." The word assistant tasted bitter in Gideon's mouth, but it opened the door they needed. Dr. Cray's desperation outweighed his prejudices when faced with mounting deaths. Their first patient was a blacksmith's son, burning with fever and barely conscious. Eudora worked quietly while Gideon provided the public face of treatment. Her herbal compounds began reducing the boy's temperature within hours. Word spread through the town as the blacksmith's son improved. By evening, desperate families were bringing their sick to the makeshift clinic Dr. Cray had established in the church basement. Eudora's treatments proved remarkably effective against the epidemic disease. Her fever-reducing teas worked faster than conventional remedies. Her herbal poultices drew infection from wounds. Most importantly, her diagnostic skills helped identify the disease's progression before symptoms became critical. But success brought scrutiny. Sheriff Hargrove noticed that the mountain man's assistant seemed unusually knowledgeable about medical procedures. She moved through the clinic with practiced efficiency, her hands steady during treatments that made experienced nurses faint. "That woman knows too much for a simple helper." Dr. Cray had observed the same phenomenon. Eudora's medical knowledge clearly exceeded that of most trained practitioners. Her treatments followed principles he recognized but couldn't quite place. When she thought no one was watching, she made decisions with the confidence of an experienced physician. "Where did she learn those techniques?" Cray asked Gideon privately. "Mountain folk learn what they need to survive." The explanation satisfied no one, but the results spoke louder than suspicion. Families who had resigned themselves to losing loved ones watched their children recover. The epidemic's spread began slowing for the first time in weeks. Eudora felt the exhilaration of practicing medicine openly for the first time in years. Even working through Gideon's public presence, she could use her full abilities to save lives. Each successful treatment validated the knowledge Dr. Whitfield had entrusted to her, but the deception weighed heavily on both of them. Gideon received credit for medical miracles he couldn't explain. Eudora remained invisible while her treatments transformed the town's fight against disease. Late at night, as they prepared for another day of hidden healing, Eudora made a decision that would change everything. "I can't keep working in shadows while people die. Tomorrow, I practice medicine under my own name." Morning brought confrontation like thunder after lightning. Eudora entered the church basement clinic and began treating patients without waiting for Gideon's public permission. Her movements carried the authority of someone who had made peace with dangerous consequences. Sheriff Hargrove arrived within the hour. His boots echoed against stone floors as he approached the bed where Eudora was examining a fevered child. The little girl's breathing had improved dramatically under Eudora's direct care. "Step away from that child." Eudora continued her examination, checking the girl's pulse and temperature with practiced precision. Her calm defiance sent ripples of tension through the crowded clinic. "I said, step away. This child needs immediate treatment for lung congestion. Her fever has broken, but without proper care, she'll relapse within hours." Hargrove's hand moved to his gun belt. Several townspeople backed away, sensing violence in the air. But others remained close, watching the woman who had saved their family members with steady competence. "You're overstepping your place, practicing medicine without authority. I'm ordering you to leave town immediately." Gideon stepped forward, positioning himself between Hargrove and Eudora. For 3 days, he had watched her save lives while remaining invisible. The injustice of hiding her abilities while people died had eaten at his conscience like acid. "She saved more lives in 3 days than this town has seen in months. That's your doing, McAllister. Everyone knows mountain folk got their own ways of healing." "No." Gideon's voice cut through the clinic's murmur. "Every treatment, every cure, every life saved came from her knowledge. I can barely set a broken bone, but she can perform surgery that would challenge any trained doctor." The admission hung in the air like smoke from a gun barrel. Eudora felt her carefully constructed facade crumbling, but also experienced relief at having her abilities acknowledged publicly. Dr. Cray emerged from behind a curtained area where he had been treating patients with conventional medicine. His results paled compared to Eudora's success rate. The contrast had forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about his own limitations. "Impossible. Medical knowledge requires formal education, years of study. She's just a..." "Just a what?" Gideon's challenge carried the weight of 3 weeks watching Eudora's expertise firsthand. Dr. Cray studied Eudora with new attention. Her diagnostic techniques followed principles he recognized but couldn't identify. Her treatments demonstrated understanding of anatomy and physiology that surpassed his own education. Most troubling of all, her success rate with epidemic patients exceeded anything in his experience. "Where did you learn those procedures?" Eudora straightened, knowing the moment of complete revelation had arrived. "Dr. Marcus Whitfield trained me for 15 years. I learned surgery, diagnostics, and advanced herbal medicine under his direct supervision." The name struck Dr. Cray like a physical blow. He stumbled backward, his face draining of color. Several townspeople looked confused, but Cray understood the impossible significance of what he had just heard. "Marcus Whitfield died 5 years ago in Georgia. He was one of the most brilliant physicians in the South, taught advanced surgical techniques that most doctors never master. He taught them to me." Dr. Cray's mind raced through the implications. If this woman had truly studied under Marcus Whitfield, she possessed medical knowledge that exceeded his own training. Whitfield's techniques were legendary among physicians who had studied his published papers. "Prove it." Eudora moved to her medical supplies and withdrew her hidden journal. The leather-bound book fell open to pages covered with detailed anatomical drawings and treatment notes written in 2 different hands. Dr. Cray recognized Whitfield's distinctive handwriting immediately. "These are surgical procedures I've only read about in medical journals. Whitfield's advanced techniques for treating epidemic diseases, herbal preparations that combine traditional remedies with scientific understanding." Sheriff Hargrove sensed the conversation slipping beyond his control. "Doesn't matter who taught her what. She's got no legal right to practice medicine in this territory." "Neither do you," Dr. Cray said quietly. His words carried the authority of sudden realization. "I studied at Pennsylvania Medical College for 4 years. She learned directly from Marcus Whitfield, who trained more successful physicians than any medical school in the country." The revelation transformed the clinic's atmosphere. Families who had watched their loved ones recover under Eudora's care now understood they had witnessed something extraordinary. A woman they had dismissed as a servant possessed medical training that surpassed the town's official doctor. Mrs. Patterson, whose son had recovered from near death under Eudora's treatment, stepped forward. "I don't care who taught who what. She saved my boy when everyone said he was dying." Other voices joined hers. The blacksmith whose son had been their first success, the merchant whose wife had survived lung fever, the preacher whose daughter now played outside instead of lying fevered in bed. But not everyone accepted the transformation. Several townspeople gathered around Sheriff Hargrove, their faces dark with the anger of challenged assumptions. The idea of a black woman possessing superior medical knowledge threatened their fundamental beliefs about social order. "This is unnatural," Hargrove declared. "Goes against the proper way of things. I won't stand for it in my town." Dr. Cray looked between his medical journals and Eudora's superior results. His pride warred against evidence that couldn't be denied. She had accomplished in 3 days what he had failed to achieve in weeks of struggle. The clinic fell silent as two visions of medicine faced each other across a divide that went deeper than training or technique. The confrontation shattered when urgent footsteps echoed through the clinic. Deputy Morrison burst through the doors, his face pale with panic. Behind him stumbled Thomas Hargrove, the sheriff's brother, carrying a small bundle wrapped in blankets. "Sheriff, it's Emma. She's burning up with fever. Won't wake up." Sheriff Hargrove's 8-year-old daughter lay unconscious in her uncle's arms. Her small face was flushed crimson, with the same epidemic fever that had claimed dozens of children. Sweat soaked her hair despite the cool morning air. Dr. Cray moved forward immediately, his hands shaking as he examined the child. The symptoms were advanced. High fever, labored breathing, and complete unconsciousness indicated the disease had progressed beyond the stage where his conventional treatments typically succeeded. "How long has she been like this?" "Found her this morning. Wouldn't eat breakfast, then just collapsed." Cray's examination revealed what everyone feared. Emma showed all the signs of severe epidemic fever in its most dangerous phase. His medical bag contained the same treatments that had failed to save other children at this stage of illness. The clinic held its breath as Hargrove cradled his daughter. His face showed the desperate transformation of a man watching his child slip away. The authority that had challenged Eudora moments before crumbled into parental terror. "Can you save her?" he asked Dr. Cray. Cray's hesitation spoke louder than words. He had lost 3 children in the past week with similar symptoms. His conventional medicines worked in early stages, but proved inadequate against advanced cases. "I'll do everything possible." But everyone in the clinic understood the unspoken truth. Dr. Cray's treatments had already proven insufficient against this level of disease progression. Emma needed intervention beyond conventional medicine. Eudora stepped forward, her medical instincts overriding every other consideration. She had seen this exact presentation in dozens of cases during her training with Dr. Whitfield. The child was dying, but specialized treatment could still save her life. "I can help her." Hargrove's eyes met hers across his daughter's still form. The man who had demanded her removal from town now faced the impossible choice between his prejudices and his child's life. "You're certain?" Dr. Whitfield treated hundreds of similar cases. "I know the specific combination of treatments needed for advanced epidemic fever." Dr. Cray watched the exchange with growing understanding. His medical training told him Emma was likely beyond saving with conventional methods, but he had witnessed Eudora's success with cases he had given up as hopeless. Let her try. Hargrove's world collapsed into a single moment of choice. His daughter's breathing grew shallower with each passing minute. Pride and prejudice warred against the desperate love of a father watching his child die. "Do it." Eudora moved with the swift precision of emergency medicine. From her supplies came specialized herbs that Dr. Cray had never seen used in combination. She prepared a fever-reducing compound that went beyond conventional treatments, incorporating advanced techniques that Whitfield had developed for the most severe cases. The clinic watched in complete silence as she worked. Her hands moved with surgical confidence, every action purposeful and precise. She explained each treatment to Dr. Cray as she administered it, sharing knowledge that demonstrated the depth of her training. This combination reduces brain fever while protecting organ function. Dr. Whitfield developed it after studying epidemic patterns in 3 different regions. Emma's breathing improved within minutes of the first treatment. Her fever began responding to herbal compounds that worked through mechanisms Dr. Cray had never studied. Most remarkably, her unconscious state started lifting as inflammation reduced throughout her system. Eudora monitored the child's vital signs with practiced expertise. She adjusted treatments based on Emma's responses, demonstrating diagnostic skills that surpassed formal medical training. Her journal guided dosages and timing with scientific precision. Temperature dropping, pulse strengthening, brain function returning to normal parameters. After 2 hours of intensive treatment, Emma's eyes opened. She looked around the clinic with growing awareness, her fever broken and consciousness fully restored. The child who had arrived near death was now sitting up and asking for water. The transformation left the clinic stunned into silence. Hargrove held his daughter with tears streaming down his face, watching her miraculous recovery from what had seemed certain death. Dr. Cray stared at his own medical supplies with new understanding. Everything he had learned in 4 years of medical school paled beside the advanced techniques Eudora had just demonstrated. Her treatment had achieved what he would have declared impossible. How did you know those specific combinations? Dr. Whitfield documented every successful treatment. His journal contains procedures for epidemic diseases that most medical schools have never studied. The townspeople who had witnessed Emma's recovery began talking among themselves. They had seen conventional medicine fail repeatedly, but watched this woman achieve miraculous results through superior knowledge and technique. Mrs. Patterson spoke first. She saved Emma just like she saved my boy. Other voices joined the growing consensus. The blacksmith nodded toward his healthy son. The merchant gestured to his recovered wife. Family after family testified to Eudora's medical successes. Sheriff Hargrove looked at his daughter, then at the woman who had given her back her life. His entire worldview shifted in the space between his child's near death and miraculous recovery. I was wrong about you. Sheriff Hargrove stood before the gathered town council 3 days later, his daughter Emma playing healthy and bright at his feet. The same child who had nearly died from epidemic fever now showed no trace of illness, thanks to Eudora's advanced medical intervention. This woman possesses medical knowledge that saved my daughter's life when conventional treatment failed. She's demonstrated abilities that surpass our current medical resources. Mayor Williams shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The idea of officially recognizing a black woman as a medical practitioner challenged every social convention he understood. But the evidence of successful treatments filled the room in the form of recovered patients and grateful families. Dr. Cray stepped forward, carrying a stack of medical journals and Eudora's treatment notes. His pride had wrestled with professional honesty for 3 sleepless nights. The conclusion was undeniable. I've studied her techniques against established medical literature. Her training under Dr. Marcus Whitfield provided knowledge that exceeds my formal education. Her success rate with epidemic patients is unprecedented in my experience. The council members looked to Eudora, who sat quietly beside Gideon. Her composure radiated the confidence of someone whose abilities had been tested and proven under the most demanding circumstances. The town needs her medical expertise, Dr. Cray continued. I recommend official recognition as Cedar Ridge's second medical practitioner. Councilmember Peterson raised his hand. What about proper credentials, medical licenses? There are established procedures for these things. Dr. Whitfield's training was more comprehensive than most medical schools provide. Her results speak for themselves. We can establish appropriate documentation based on demonstrated competence, rather than formal degrees. The debate continued for 2 hours. Some council members argued for traditional requirements. Others pointed to the lives saved and the epidemic finally brought under control. Emma Hargrove played quietly throughout the discussion, living proof of medical knowledge that transcended conventional boundaries. Finally, Mayor Williams called for a vote. All in favor of recognizing Eudora Mayfield as an official medical practitioner in Cedar Ridge. 4 hands rose. Then 5. Finally, 6 of the 7 council members voted in favor. Only Peterson abstained, unable to overcome his traditional expectations, but unwilling to vote against proven results. The council's decision rippled through Cedar Ridge like stones dropped in still water. Some residents embraced the change, grateful for the medical expertise that had saved their families. Others struggled with assumptions that had defined their understanding of social order, but practical needs overrode theoretical objections. Word spread to surrounding communities about the remarkable healer in Cedar Ridge. Families traveled from distant towns seeking treatment for conditions that had stumped their local doctors. Eudora's reputation grew with each successful intervention. Her combination of Dr. Whitfield's advanced techniques and her own herbal expertise proved effective against ailments that conventional medicine couldn't address. She treated everything from epidemic diseases to surgical emergencies with equal competence. Dr. Cray became her willing collaborator rather than reluctant superior. Their partnership combined his formal education with her advanced practical training. Together, they established Cedar Ridge as a regional center for medical excellence. 6 months later, Eudora stood in her own clinic, examining a child whose family had traveled 50 miles seeking her expertise. The building sat on Main Street, between the general store and the bank, its sign reading E. Mayfield Medical Practitioner in bold letters. Gideon entered, carrying supplies from the pharmacy in the next town over. Their partnership had evolved from employer and employee to trusted friends united by shared purpose. He managed the practical aspects of her practice while she focused on healing. 3 more families arrived this morning. Word spreading about your success with lung fever. Eudora smiled as she prepared herbal treatments that combined traditional remedies with scientific precision. Her medical journal, once hidden like a dangerous secret, now lay open on her desk, where visiting doctors studied Dr. Whitfield's advanced techniques. Sheriff Hargrove stopped by every evening to check on the clinic and ensure Eudora faced no harassment from newcomers unfamiliar with her established reputation. His daughter Emma often accompanied him, chattering about her day and showing no awareness that her recovery had challenged an entire community's assumptions. Evening Dr. Mayfield. The title still surprised Eudora sometimes. From cooking in a mountain cabin to practicing medicine openly had required a journey through prejudice, doubt, and the ultimate test of life and death emergency, but each successful treatment validated Dr. Whitfield's belief that knowledge belonged to those willing to use it in service of healing. Dr. Cray appeared in the doorway carrying a letter from the Territorial Medical Board. Official recognition came through. Your credentials are now formally documented throughout Colorado Territory. The letter represented more than personal achievement. It established precedent for evaluating medical competence based on demonstrated ability rather than traditional educational requirements. Other skilled healers who lacked formal degrees might now find paths to official recognition. As evening settled over Cedar Ridge, Eudora prepared her clinic for the next day's patients. Her herb garden grew outside the window, providing fresh ingredients for treatments that combined Dr. Whitfield's scientific understanding with traditional healing wisdom. New families continued arriving weekly, drawn by stories of miraculous recoveries and compassionate care. Children who had been near death played in the streets. Adults returned to work after treatments that conventional medicine couldn't provide. The mountain man had indeed paid for a black woman to cook for him. Instead, he had received a teacher who showed an entire community that grace emerged not from words or intentions, but from competence, dignity, and the unwavering commitment to heal, regardless of the obstacles society placed in the path of service.